Practice makes perfect.
I think so.
Hold on, not yet. There we go. Now we go. Okay, good evening or afternoon, everyone. I call the meeting of the Human Rights Commission Monday, July 8, 2019, to order at 3 p.m. And first up is to share our mission statement. Commissioner Flood.
Thank you. The mission of the Palm Springs Human Rights Commission is to promote and protect the diversity of our community and to improve human relations through education and community awareness.
Excellent. Dale, we've got
You have a quorum.
excellent. Item 4, public comments. Any person who wishes to speak on a topic within the city's jurisdiction during this portion of the agenda must file a speaker card with the staff liaison before that portion of the agenda is called. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Commissioners will not enter into discussion with speakers, but during commission comments may refer the matter to staff or report and recommendation at a future commission meeting. And today we have one speaker who would like to speak during public comments. Wes Winter, come on up.
Thank you.
Welcome, Wes. Good to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you. Yeah, I came.
Is there a green light on?
Now there is. I'm Wes Winter, and I just came by to introduce myself. I'm the new executive director of Mizell Senior Center, and I've been there just since March, so I'm able to get out in the community a little bit now and meet folks and say hello and hear what it is that they're interested in from Mizell. So I really appreciate you having me come and talk to you today. But that's really what I wanted to do, was just to say hello and introduce myself. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
Well, that was short and sweet. I
was
love
short
it.
and sweet.
Well,
That's-
thanks for doing that. Thank you. All right, next up we have a guest speaker from the Transgender Community Coalition and their executive director and CEO, Tommy Clinton. Tommy, you're on. And Tommy is making a presentation today on behalf of the Transgender Community Coalition for a 10-minute presentation. So welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about trans healthcare and serving the trans community here and the importance of healthcare as being not only an equity, but an issue of equality. And when you do not have equal access to health care, you often are disfranchised and you are not able to reach your fullest potential as other individuals are. So I wanted to go over just a little bit about how we can potentially add that into some addressments with the commission and look out for the trans community. So the primary things that we want to address are education, systemic preclusion, systemic evaluation, response, and implementation. So the most, probably the ones that are least understood is the systemic preclusion and systemic evaluation. So an example of a systemic preclusion would be like having a policy, a business policy or an ordinance or something that precludes an individual from equal access. So as you know, with trans people, bathrooms were a big issue. And in some states, individuals passed ordinances where trans people could not use the bathroom. So they were actually having to urinate behind the buildings, or if they were caught even going into a bathroom in which was not expression of their gender, they could be arrested. So that is a systemic preclusion. So evaluating those systemic preclusions is a way that we make sure that there's equal access for all individuals. And although in the trans community, we are part of the LGBT community, we're very different, and we have very unique and very different needs. Often people were very excited over marriage equality, and we were just like wanting to use the bathroom and have health care. So we're very indifferent in our needs, and I think that needs to be mindful of that when we're making decisions. prioritize, authorize, and monetize. So prioritize them is randomly picking businesses that score usually in the HRC Corporate Equality Index that state that they provide those services and having those discussions with corporations that are local to make sure that those are open accesses, because what happens is you have trans people that are wanting to stay on Medi-Cal and they don't want to get jobs because they can't get adequate health care. So that actually burdens the community when these individuals are stating, and there are some that are stating that they have access, they provide that, and then when they try to get medical referrals, they find out that no, they actually don't. And so it's a good way to develop those relationships with corporations to make sure that Palm Springs stays known for its nationally or globally as far as being LGBT equality. Authorized, when you find issues, you want to make sure you bring the person in that is authorized to make changes. And then you want to also have discussions, because usually the primary discussion is cost with the business. And there's actually, we'll go into it, that there is really very little cost in providing health care for trans people. It actually is more targeted towards them being trans versus the health care. So the Department of Managed Healthcare is actually the ones that manage the healthcare within the state of California, and which mandate that businesses that provide health that are open here that are required to provide healthcare, that it be inclusive of trans individuals. But there is a great deal of people who kind of ignore that or are not informed that they have to provide it. And so working with the Department of Managed Healthcare, or even inviting them down to discuss what the laws require, might be a great opportunity for Palm Springs to develop that relationship with Sacramento. They do require to be inclusive of the entire LGBTQ community, and that includes making things cost effective. And so, for instance, HIV medications, knowing that that is predominantly a lot of gay men are living with HIV, keeping those affordable. And as a mean to access that health care, because in the past, they would say, well, your copay is $600. Or something like that, and that would be a systemic preclusion. That was a way to encourage not to have cultural inclusion within a business and individuals. So that's a good way of discussing those type of situations. So strategies to improve access to points of quality of care. Access points, more providers willing to accept transgender patients, discussing that with your local providers, willing to learn how to provide health care, quality networks within 30 miles, which actually is a regulation by the Department of Managed Health Care. But a lot of trans people have to go to Los Angeles to get their health care. Or they go over the border and buy their medications illegally and bring them back over. And so making sure that they have access to quality health care within a 30-mile radius improves the quality of life for the trans people in the Palm Springs area. Cultural competence of healthcare also, knowing how to use proper pronouns. That's our first test we always give them. And if they fail or lose, we know exactly where we need to start our training at. So, and then Covered California, again, requires us to actually provide adequate networks of healthcare within our area, within 30 miles. So the benefits of role models. So actually encouraging role models and to say, well, these individuals provide civil protections for LGBT individuals working within a business or a corporation, healthcare and things like that, and honoring them to encourage others to follow suit would be a great way to do that. I know every year I'm one of the recipients of an award. It might be a great opportunity to see some individuals that really do step forward and support the LGBT community and human rights, not just in words, but in actions. That's the big difference. Anybody can say anything they want, but their actions are usually louder than words. So models for healthy transgender community is you want to research the policies, you want to address discrepancies, and then they want to discuss about investing into their employees or into the consumer. As far as employee retention, because trans individuals are usually at least double the national rate of unemployment. So when they do get a job, they tend to stick with it. And because they know that there's not a lot of opportunity out there. So that employment retention alone, where you don't have to worry about training more individuals and doing things like that, actually costs the corporation less, because they're retaining them and they're more loyal. So here's an example of the costs of using the military, because that was the hot topic. So I figured I'd throw one of those in there. I'm known for that. So the RAND Corporation found that transgender healthcare was cost-effective and not burdensome. So between 2.4 to 8 million of the Homeland of our defense is trans healthcare, and the total budget is about $49.3 billion. So as you can see, it's 0.017% out of the military budget, meaning there's not very much. And the average is about $438 a year. So that's only an increase on an individual of about 8.43%. But when you go over to the $49.3 billion, they actually provide $46.1 million for Viagra. They $84.24 million for managing erectile dysfunctions. And then you go into the bottom here where it actually discusses mastectomies, hysterectomies, genital construction from war injuries, hormone replacement therapy. All those are provided actually to non-transgender individuals. So there's really no difference except for what the person is in which they're being precluded. They provide bilateral mastectomies for women who have breast cancer, and then they do chest construction to deal with that for a psychological issue. They do hysterectomies. Both men and women receive hormone replacement therapy. So those things are already in place. But they deliberately just target the individual based on them being what they are versus that it's a cost issue. So I wanted to give this example based on economic structure just in Palm Springs alone. So cost of discrimination based on survival sex work in Palm Springs on some of our data collections and things like that. So there's an estimated 288 transgender people within Palm Springs. That's at a 0.6% versus the of 47.142 population. That's about the average in Palm Springs, 288. So HIV diagnosis with CDC, African Americans 44%, white 26, Hispanic 7. So on an average of $39,000 a year for HIV, and most of this is due to the fact that they can't get jobs, or they choose not to get jobs because they can't get health care in a business model, costs the consumer about that much. So it's actually very cost effective to actually support equality and encourage individuals to be more receptive and protect their civil rights. And I think that although we discuss trans issues a lot, I don't see a lot of specifically trans things. I see a lot of LGBT stuff, and often when you're with the LGBT brothers and sisters, they kind of outshine the trans, so they're kind of overshadowed, and their needs are not really being met. So just addressing economic development and also access to healthcare is showing by numbers it can actually have an effect on reducing the cost to the taxpayer on HIV, because they have to pay bills. And if they can't have money, or they have to exchange sex for money for health care because insurance is not covering them, or there's a wide variety of things that play into place. And this is systemic preclusions. This is the cost of discrimination in straight numbers. So the uniqueness, we want to really discuss about the uniqueness of the trans individuals so that people understand them more. And when you're discussing things, sometimes it's important just to say, well, how would that affect the trans community? You know, how is that going to affect them directly because of their population? Explaining in the free market, you know, providing inclusion of policies in business creates employee loyalty and retention. Testing hypothetical scenarios. Like if we have a trans man that is on testosterone, which increases the likelihood of ovarian cancer or breast cancer, where are they going to receive adequate health care for gynecology? Because if you go into a place that says women's checkups, you're outed. And then you have people that call you names and everything else when they're like, whoa, what's going on here? So just addressing the word to wellness checkups versus women's checkups changes the whole dynamic for individual to live the way they want to and not have to out themselves for health care. So they tend to not want to seek these services in fear that, well, how am I going to be treated? I'm going to be in a group of individuals that are probably homophobic or transphobic. How am I going to do these things? So sometimes they put them off. And then by that time, they have serious cancer, and that costs everyone, the taxpayer, a great deal of funds. Living then authentically, so working together to remove systemic barriers allows an individual to live authentically. And what authentically means is that we can access anything that anybody else does. That's all we want. We just want to work, complain about our bosses, and pay taxes. And, you know, occasionally go out on happy hour. So, you know, and that's basically what we're wanting to do. But when you have systemic preclusions or individuals in which are race, trans individuals from the models and dynamics, it becomes burdensome for them to do that. So this here, this is a little bit shocking. It's towards the end. I wanted to put it towards the end. This individual had a vaginoplasty, which means that she had confirmation surgery. And this was left up inside of her. And the doctor forgot to take it out. She is, and what happened is that there was no one in the area that could treat her. She had to be rushed to Loma Linda Veterans Hospital, in which then said they realized that there was something wrong. She was in severe pain, because this was supposed to be removed, because when they do it, they have tissue, which they make the vaginoplasty. And so there's a tissue, a very soft tissue that grows in that cavity, and it's part of the construction. And so it had fused itself with the tissue. So what happened is when they finally got to it and found out what the problem was and removed it, all of her tissue internally was removed. And there's no way to do that. They're discussing that potentially fish skin from tilapia will actually work for a vaginal tissue. But to date, unless it's your tissue, and redoing that is a very difficult thing. So it means that she does not have a working vagina. And so she has to live with that for the rest of her life. It's called a rigid vagina, which means that it can't be used except for urination, you know, through that area. There's a video, I was going to show it, but it kind of shocked the individual right here. I will only show it if you want me to show it, of a Palm Springs resident, which had a bilateral mastectomy, and he was squirting blood 2 feet. I had taken him into my home and was taking care of him while he was healing. Desert Age Project, he switched doctors to Desert Age Project, Anthony Velasco, which we honored recently. And Anthony saved his life. So his bilateral mastectomy had a hematoma, and there was a large cavity of blood that was up inside of the chest construction, which was coagulating and becoming dead blood. And so he became septic and almost died. He was rushed to the hospital. The hospital didn't know what to do. We're like, well, we don't deal with trans people like this. We don't know what to do with them. And it was a Friday, and the closest person was in Los Angeles. And there's no way at Friday at noon to get to Los Angeles within a reasonable amount of time except by helicopter, and it wasn't that considered an emergency. So there was an issue with that as well, and it turned into this enormous dynamic of what do we do with this person? So this gets out to the trans community, and it just really tells them, it says that Palm Springs and other cities, are they ready for trans people? Are they? And what I'm asking, I guess, is that you open up the conversations and maybe start bringing individuals in to see how they are prepared to accept trans people who have emergencies or complications with their surgeries. How are we going to address that? And why is this person going all the way to Los Angeles for services when they do bilateral mastectomies here? Do you see what I'm saying? Why are these providers not within the network to provide these services and prepared to make sure this person's life is saved? And if it wasn't for Anthony Velasco, he would be dead. Because the provider that he had at the time said, oh, this is normal. And I said, well, I don't know what provider that is, but squirting blood 2 feet is not normal in my world. And so things like this are really happening. And so what I'm asking is that maybe, you just start thinking about how you might be able to help the trans community a little bit more, because it's very invisible. And unfortunately, my ears are pretty heavy to the ground, so they usually come to me. But I can tell you there's more stories like this that are just very tragic. And I just feel that, Palm Springs probably just doesn't know that and wants to fix that. They just have to know before you can fix. And so that's what I'm mostly here for, and here to answer some questions. So the video there, it shocked him, so I'm not really, unless you want to see it, that's up to you. So that's the end. I just, if you have any questions, I'm open to questions. Hi, Annie.
Hi, Tommy. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
And I thought I was pretty well educated here, and to your credit, I picked up some really important points, so thank you for that. Particularly here at the end where you're speaking about this very unfortunate outcome for this person you helped out, the hematoma case, and others like it, which it sounds like you're aware of. Has this information, has this type of presentation been made to the Desert Healthcare Foundation?
It has not. Donna and I are we talk a lot. Yeah, like we just actually emailed each other this morning, and my concern is I want to make sure that people are not going after funds just to get funds, and they're really there to help that community. So those models here in like Palm Springs already exists. What we have to do is we have to get people within that network. For instance, we have people who do mastectomies, bilateral mastectomies at Desert Regional, in the cancer side. So getting them within network so individuals can live more authentically, I think is important. But also the importance of the Desert Healthcare District is they wield a lot of influence to make things happen, which would be a beautiful thing. I'd be open to that if Les would like me.
Okay, well, I definitely would encourage you to ask Les if it'd be possible for this information to be shared.
I will.
Yeah,
I will.
because, Les is a great supporter.
He's
And,
very supportive.
Isn't he? And I think the Healthcare Foundation also, maybe a lot of folks there who may already think, oh, I kind of know these things, and maybe do know a little bit, but not the whole story that you're providing.
It's very tragic hearing the stories. I'm usually the one. I'm like the mommy. I didn't pick that role. It just kind of happened. But it's a matter of getting them, in my eyes. I want to get them into jobs. I want to get them into homes. I want to get them into healthcare. I want to get them moved on. And that's really my main focus. Now you have some that just will never reach that, like anyone else. But that's my main focus. And that to me is the part that I can give them authentically so that they have a sense of dignity and respect, that I get a paycheck for the work that I do. And I have to pay bills. I have to do other things. And I said, that's living authentically like anybody else, especially when you get to complain about your boss. That's like non-trans people get to do that all the time. So the great thing is there's a lot more people reaching out and doing healthcare, and it's since I started on this road, this is the first time in their history in this area that they had the word choice. They can actually choose a provider now in some areas, depending on their insurances. So they never had that before. So they were like, what do I do? I was only used to one that took me and was very verbally abusive. Now I've got choices. I says, well, if that one's verbally abusive, that's called capitalism. Now you can go to the other one and he loses the patient. So creating those dynamics within the community are very important to them because they get to start choosing their provider and choosing a little bit, having some decisions in their healthcare, which before they never had, and where non-trans people always had. So again, we're very different than the LGBs in our needs.
How is Palm Springs comparable to other cities as far as rights in healthcare for the trans community? Is there another city that we could look at and say, that's a great model?
That's a good question. So I would say, a lot of it depends on the individual. So Palm Springs is kind of like I call it the desert version of San Francisco. Okay, that's what I call it. And so, San Francisco probably will have your best because they're the most evolved. In fact, San Francisco was the first human rights riot in 1966 called the Riots of Compton Cafeteria. Predates Stonewall. And then just like the trans woman in Stonewall, threw salt and pepper shakers. So the rule is if you have a trans person upset, hide your salt and pepper shakers. So, you probably want to look at that. A lot of it depends on what's needed. So, for instance, like what we need right now is we need more access points for local health care. So just in case something goes wrong, there's about a 51% chance for the surgeries to go wrong. That's a high number. If I said to all of you, you have about a 51 to 54% chance of getting a car wreck if you go out right now, how many of you would call Lyft or Uber? So it's one of those things. So I think a lot of it depends on that. So what you have to do is you have to break it down. And a lot of times when I'm dealing with trans people, I kind of use the onion effect. I'm saying there's layers. And I got to peel back the layers until I get to the core to figure out what the problem is. And I start picking it apart and doing that. So healthcare-wise, I think probably, again, the Desert Healthcare District doing a call out to say, and with the Desert Regional, Linda's a big supporter of the trans community, Linda Evans, and saying, okay, we need to improve this. And we need to have a committee that's going to do this, or we need to do this or that, would be a good start. Then also addressing the economic structure, which we do. We do a lot of the trainings to address the economics. So it really comes down to a word that's called intersectionalities. I don't know if everyone's aware of what that word is, but you have different circles, like you have healthcare, you have food, you have housing, you have mental health. Well, then, where those areas overlap each other, that's where the empty spots are. So unless you're a bullfrog, you got to hop from one circle to another circle. So where the intersectionalities are is where most of the people of all different types of minorities fall through the hole. And that's where we want to really kind of fill that in, because that's where the problems happen. That's where the devastation happens. That's where you have the other issues. More questions?
Actually, I have a question, quick. First of all, thank you for the service that you provide this community and the support as well.
Thank you.
This commission is looking at Days of Awareness. It's on our agenda today. We've chosen several that we want to recognize. We're not sure to the extent that we will do that. We'd like to partner with other organizations that do recognize. And one of our days is the 17th of May, which is International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. Do you have any activities that you do that we might be able to, as you as an organization, that we might be able to partner with you or support you? Or?
Yeah. So every year we hold the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and our local murder victim, to remember her name, is Raina Chessman. She was dismembered up in Whitewater, but she was a Palm Springs resident. And I think it was in 1999, if I remember correctly. So violence in the trans community is enormously big. It's the highest rate against any other minority and stuff like that. So you're talking Usually, 8 out of 10 experience violence, and our murder rate is extremely high. So there's a Transgender Day of Remembrance, in which we put on November 20th. And then next year, we are doing a date that is called Transgender Day of Empowerment, because I think it's really important when people are broke down that you empower them and you give them a time to celebrate. And that's usually on April 5th. In doing that. And so that is really the two main ones that we provide here. But we're an Inland Empire. Like we have Transgender Day visibility over in Riverside. I think we had about 90 or 100 come. And then we've had other ones in the high desert and stuff like that. So we have a pretty broad area that we cover. So those would be the main ones.
So
And I
we
think
have
there's
some
a
opportunities to come
Yeah.
alongside you. And, okay.
Yeah, I think I would give a word of caution about creating more. I think what happens is things get a little bit diluted,
Yes,
and so people are all of a sudden they become tone deaf.
exactly.
And so, like, one of the things that we experience is, like, we have Transgender Community Coalition and we have Transgender Health and Wellness Center. And then they're like, all they hear is the word is trans. So they just think, oh, or something's going on. And they immediately come out to me and they say, I'm so sorry I wasn't able to make it to your event. And I'm like, what event? It wasn't my event. What are you talking about? So they start getting, it gets a little bit hazy for individuals. And so maybe aligning with things that are going on that would be beneficial might be able to be a good way to do it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. More questions?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tommy. Appreciate you being here and making the presentation for the commission today. We
All right, well,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
One late breaking, very quick question.
Hot off the
Simply-
press.
Here we go. Yeah, could you make available to Dale or through some process the presentation you offered today?
Yes.
That's very useful.
Yes.
And would you have any objection if that was distributed further?
No, but we would prefer just one of the things that, as you see when you're doing it, there's a lot of information that is not given that it's important that you have a person who's experienced, so to understand it. So just make sure that that's aware that we'll be happy to come in and present it and discuss it with individuals, but it's really important that you have a trans person that's can share that information, because as you know, when you ask questions, you want to have someone that's like prepared for that.
Yeah, good response, thanks.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we skipped over item 5 so we can allow our speaker to go first. So we'll go back to commissioner, staff, and student comments. Start over with Commissioner Flood.
I have nothing this time, but I was just, I've been reading articles about the homelessness crisis that's all in the papers, and I figure we should be more aware of that. So it's a big question, and everybody wonders what to do about it. So I guess we're part of it to wonder what to do and try to help. But that's all I have.
How about that earthquake?
Which one?
I have nothing except about that.
I'll wait till newsworthy items.
Nothing at this time.
No comment at this time.
I don't believe I have anything this time. I don't have an agenda in front of me, but Ron, when are we reporting out from the meeting Terry and Denise and I had? I thought I saw that on the agenda when it came out.
What was were you having subcommittee meeting? What was the subcommittee?
Yeah, it's when we were going over the days, we wanted to have days of remembrance.
Yeah, it's on item C.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have 2-7.
Ooh, yeah, we do.
Oh, the first 7C.
7-1.
Okay.
Okay, and nothing for me, Dale. Jay?
I did see a couple of our commissioners at the Desert Highlands Gateway Community Meeting. And just so you know, the item that Find Food Bank had brought forward will be going to City Council. And that is an item where the city is considering providing funding for a food distribution pantry at the Desert Highlands Community Center. It would be twice a month.
And is that getting approved, or that's on the agenda for approval on the 10th?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, now we can go to the first item 7, our committee reports. Executive Committee, Jim was accepted or appointed to the Executive Committee at the last meeting. We didn't meet since then, so there's nothing to report there. Next up is the Community Development Mediation, which includes, who remembers? What falls under that category?
Oh, well. Yeah, the one component is related to the training for mediation.
Yes.
Yes. And so actually, Suzanne and I have traded phone calls in the last 2 or 3 days. Actually, Terry, was this something you had agreed you would also be working on? That's what I thought, yeah. So what I was really going to do in that call, but give me an up or down on this, was have a brief conversation with her, but really kind of refer her to you for that. Does that line up with your expectations, and does that work okay for you? Well, we haven't had, you see, we haven't, or maybe what may make the most sense is maybe you, me, and she get together, 3 of us. Let's do it that way. And that way, I think we'll share the right amount of information for that. I did briefly mention to her that it was something that, per what we had discussed here, people correct me if I have this wrong, is that we didn't, since this has been a program that has been at least on paper available for a while. We didn't want to have it just fade away as we look at some of the broader issues. So I did mention there's a connection to some of the broader issues about in City Academy and all of that, but the sense of the commission was that we didn't want that broader vision to essentially slow down or impede reviving mediation if that's reasonable to do. So I think that's a conversation the 3 of us could have. Does that make sense? It does. Okay.
Beautiful. The other categories is Desert Highland Gateway Estates Committee Association, the Homeless List Task Force, and Affordable Housing all fall under Community Development and Mediation. Any updates from those subcommittees or people who attended Desert Highlands?
So I went to the Desert Highlands meeting, the last one, and I had the opportunity to get up and explain our film fundraiser legacy event and ask the community if they would be interested in partnering with us for 2020. And I had 2 people, Cynthia Session and Sequoia, she didn't give me her last name, but they're the secretary and the assistant secretary of the board. And they said, yes, we'd be glad to dialogue with you and figure it out. In addition, because I think we all know we're going to need help with this, I've solicited some just residents of Palm Springs who've been willing to, they volunteered to help us sell tickets and make sure it's a very successful event. And then I just need to know which commissioners will join me, because certainly I want to get started with this in August of the planning and the choosing of the film and so on. Maybe we can do it in February, which is Black History Month, or maybe it'll be later, but regardless, it takes time to plan this, doesn't it, Ryan? Yeah. So any volunteers, anybody want to work with me on this project?
I do.
Ryan does. Good. Terry?
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else? Plates are full? I got it. Okay, thank you, and we'll set a meeting for this coming month.
Okay, next is Community Relations and Budget, and under this, the umbrella is Finance.
Well, Ryan and I did not meet this past month, so we didn't discuss it, but I think at our next meeting, which I hope is soon, we're going to be discussing ordering the bracelets that'll say Palm Springs Human Rights Commission on them, so we're all set for our parade season.
All right, excellent. Youth Education Affairs Committee, Ryan and Denise report on student representatives.
Unfortunately, nothing new, sir.
Okay. Cultural Affairs Committee, falling under this is Master Calendar.
this together, so I didn't do this part.
Yeah, okay, well, nothing new.
Nothing.
I was gonna say nothing new other than these days that we're gonna
These
discuss
days,
later,
yeah.
later in
It'll
the
change it,
meeting.
the days.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Community outreach and marketing.
I guess I spoke in the wrong category. I apologize.
Okay, nothing to report on community service awards. Main Street, Palm Springs, I wasn't in attendance this month, so I can't report on that. Jim, 1 PS.
Oh, okay, 1 PS. Oh, thank you. I really don't have anything to report. I did not attend the last meeting. I forget what my conflict was, but I had a good excuse, but I was not there. But essentially, 1 PS is moving into its quiet period. The one big issue, I will tell you one big issue's out there, and maybe we'll parenthetically touch us at some point, but I think primary ownership is going to be with 1 PS working with the city. And that's going to be on cannabis cultivation problems that are showing up. Definitely the neighborhoods surrounding Desert Highlands and Demuth Park are both registering a fairly strong series of concerns about odor that's emanating from the various facilities that are there. And so there's a very active group on 1 PS now that is working that directly with the city on that to try and get to the bottom of what that's about. In particular, what's of concern to the neighborhoods was that notice, some of you may not know this, but those of us in the neighborhood organizations know that planning department, when there's a major development within, I forget what the radius is, Dale, maybe 3 miles or something, but when the proximity to a given neighborhood, they get notices of various permits, so the neighborhoods can register any concerns they would have. In these cases, no such things happened. So part of this is trying to get to the bottom of what is between the cracks in this. So it's kind of got 2 prongs. One's the immediate issue of odor abatement itself, but also a process issue of why, if something that's so important to the neighborhoods, why that type of forward planning notice did not go forth. So that could have been addressed through regular channels as opposed to be a quote-unquote crisis of sorts. So that's the hot issue. If you're wondering what the hot issue is out there, that is the hot issue. But 1 PS will go dark in August. And the next regular meeting will be a week from this. No, it will be this Thursday. Hello, we're already in the second week of the month. So this Thursday, 8 p.m. over at the city yards. So for anybody that wishes to go there, please do. Again, I see, again, even more growth in the meetings there because so many people are coming just for the general information we get from city staff, from counselors. Counselors are very good about being present and really interrelating with 1 PS. So there we go.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question, Jim? I saw something that 1 PS is doing a really exaggerated big pride event. Is that, and they were looking at it was in one of our neighborhood newsletters.
First I've heard about it.
Yeah, they said it was going to be really gigantic.
Oh.
So you don't know?
No.
Because I was wondering if that might be something that we could piggyback onto as well with our parades and things, so.
Yeah, no, I really don't.
Okay.
Although I am aware of a couple of people who I have been interpreting this as simply part of their wanting to bring into the mainstream Pride Festival more participation with neighborhoods. So there is that going on.
Okay.
I'm aware of a
Maybe
couple
that's-
of folks there who are working that.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
I think
Yeah.
it
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's as close as I can take
Okay.
it based on what I know now.
Yeah, that's what has been pitched by 1 PS is each neighborhood organization will have a representative or find somebody in history that lived in that neighborhood that can be recognized and highlighted for the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. So all 50 neighborhoods, or 49, will have, pick somebody within that neighborhood who's lived there through history and be able to recognize that individual in the parade.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
that's in November, correct?
November 3. Okay, so the last one under the Cultural Affairs Committee is the report from the Palm Springs Police Department LGBT Outreach Committee. And we are back in the routine of documenting and reporting the hate crimes that occur in Palm Springs. In our last meeting, we didn't have anything to report, but there was a hate-related incident slash crime that was reported to the police department Thursday, June 27. In the 500 block of Monterey Road, and it was a race-related hate crime. The individual was arrested, and a number of criminal charges have been filed, both by the Palm Springs Police Department and the Riverside County DA's office. So that took place, outside their home. The adult male was verbally abusive to a younger 20-year-old male that was outside of, in his neighborhood, outside of his home. And this individual actually admitted to using, singling out this individual because of his race and using hate speech. So that's the report from the LGBT Outreach Committee. Good that there was only one. But the fact that we're seeing hate crimes increase across the board, across the country, is something for us to continue to keep our eyes on. Item 6, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities. Falling under that is we have the Senior Expo Dependent Adult Bill of Rights. Anything on Senior Expo? Any development with those conversations?
No, they said that it would probably be the first week in September that they would get in touch with us, and they'd start meeting at Mizell with plans.
And do we need to continue carrying it on the agenda since it's just something we're going to
No.
be supporting?
It's just, it's until we actually have a role, and then I can bring that back to you and tell you more
Yeah.
specifically or get your approval.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the quick question is then, will there be enough time to even put it together if it doesn't start being planned until September?
Well, I think they're probably in their planning phase right now, but they're not ready to bring us in yet. I'm sure they start well in advance. But then again, it's a regular occurrence that people know that typically participate, so.
So the
To
commission
that
voted,
west left.
maybe you were absent, the commission voted, our role this year is going to be
That's
one
right.
of promoting and raising awareness, and not necessarily one of being actively engaged in the planning.
Yeah, that's a memory failure on my part, now that I've been reminded.
Yeah, okay.
I remember that. Thank you.
Okay, any other updates that we didn't touch on before we head into 7C? Let's go to 7C, United Nations International Day observances. So we've got
Okay.
Commissioner Andrade and Gross, yes? To report on that? Or just Andrade?
I'll do it.
Okay?
Well, you got last month's list, and you have, I only printed 6 copies. I'm sorry, but I'm sure there's enough for reference. Brian, I'll have you look at mine. So Jim and Denise and I met last week. That was us. Yeah. And we tried to kind of pare this list down to something a little bit more manageable, if you will, I guess. And so we took out quite a few things, right, Jim? I mean, we decided that there were a lot of areas that other organizations might be better suited to recognize or cause to be aware. So this is the list that we did come up with. I would ask that everybody on your list in May add, as Ron pointed out, the 17th of May is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So again, what we tried to do was we tried to take some of those issues that we didn't want to discount their importance and to move them under other categories. So in other words, February 20th, the World Day of Social Justice, we thought we could include restorative justice, criminal victims, those kinds of things that come under social justice. Another one, let's see, where did we do this? A couple places. International Day of Older Persons. There was a day for elder abuse, and there was one for facilities, that type of thing. So we tried to kind of compartmentalize these things and put them sort of together so that we could mention them. Now, again, we would ask, Dale, that you put these dates on the calendar just for acknowledgement. And then maybe in the month, the agenda prior to the month that they come up, you could put it on for us and we could decide at that point if there is something that we want to do other than maybe just issue a little blurb or public service announcement or something like that. But not all of them are going to be full-on events or that type of thing. So this list is for your approval, and ideally, what we would do is have each commissioner maybe take one day coming up and then just do a little research on the day and put something together that we could issue. Again, the Human Rights Commission is acknowledging World Health Day, and this is the little history on World Health Day, and this is why the commission feels that it's important to acknowledge, just something like that. Okay? So we can decide, later who's going to take what, or maybe, but we do have, as you can see, two things coming up in August. So International Youth Day. Denise was interested in that. I think she will probably write something on, she said there's just a lot of things going on in the schools. Sorry for my typo, I didn't separate aggression awareness. She said there's a lot going on with that. So I think she can do International Youth Day. I'm fine with picking up National Women's Equality Day. Are we meeting in August?
There's no meeting in
No
August.
meeting in August. Okay. So even at the September, we can figure out who wants to do October and to what extent we want to acknowledge it. So that's what the recommendation is, and I don't know if that needs a vote or...
Well, any other discussion around the table regarding the Days of Awareness for 2020?
And then, Jim, if you have anything that you want to add based on the discussions that we had.
No, you
okay.
covered it beautifully, Terry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, then Terry, I think you can restate your motion.
Okay. I move that the Human Rights Commission add these days of awareness to the calendar, the extent to which to be determined.
Okay, a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Abstention? Sweet. Congratulations. We got that taken care of. And next is 7D, the 2019-2020 Chair and Vice Chair selection. We had brought this back on the agenda for this meeting. It's typically done in July, at the meeting in July. And I just want to share what the chair and vice chair do. So the chair does, the role of the chairperson shall be to lead the meetings of the commission, call any special meetings necessary, represent the commission within the city, serve as chairperson for all executive committee meetings, serve as the function liaison with the commission staff, Dale and Jay. Other city boards, act as a liaison with other city boards and commissions, and act as a liaison with other members of city government and perform other duties as required. Now, vice chair shall assist the chairperson in all stated duties of the chair and will serve in the chairperson's absence. And we hadn't had the executive committee. We just brought that back up at our last meeting. So the executive committee is a brand new, something new that we've started. But the rotating executive member of the committee, executive committee, will serve as the chairperson in the absence of the chairperson and the vice chair. How about that, Jim? So the individual represents the commission at large at executive committee meetings and maintains a full vote when the executive committee meets and has discussions on any matter. So that's the summary of what the chair and the vice chair does. My term is up. I extended an extra 6 months, or as of 6 or 7 months. It's been a little while. So now it's open for somebody new to come in and take on the chair's role. And Commissioner Chappelle has made her intention known that she's happy to represent, continue in her position or represent how the commission, the rest of the commission would like to. So if we've got any folks that would like to throw their hat in the ring, now is the time.
Well, I guess what I've been thinking would happen and hoping would be that we would have an executive committee meeting, and our executive committee could put together a recommended slate for this group. This is kind of at least a process I'm most familiar with, and I think would make maybe a place where it'd be a little bit easier to have the discussion on who may or may not be ready to raise their hands. So I thought that was going to be part of the report today, but if we're going to proceed right ahead, then.
This is the time to have discussion. So
Oh, okay.
Whatever discussion we want to have.
Well, then
we
more
can-
formally, what I'd propose to the commission is that we have our election in September, and between now and then, we actually have the executive committee meet and receive any nominations from within the commission for anybody who's interested. And then we can have that initial discussion there and bring a potential slate here to the meeting. So it isn't kind of like, people being put on the spot in a meeting like, do you want to do it? We can have that discussion at an executive committee meeting and then bring a slate here. Obviously, if there's a late breaking interest on the part of somebody, they could throw their hat in the ring in September as well. But that would be my process suggestion for us.
Sure. Any other thoughts? I'm done today, though, so my term ends today.
Oh,
So that
okay.
would be,
I
that would
didn't
be the
include
only,
that in
that
my-
would be the only wrench in the mix is.
Well, Denise is not here to defend herself, but perhaps she could then be our acting chair for the purpose of the executive committee. Does that make sense?
Well, let me clarify. By municipal code, it's the meeting in July that you would make the selection of your chair and vice chair. Having consulted with the city clerk, because the vacancy that will be left with Jessica retiring, there would not be the new commissioner appointed probably until the September meeting and possibly even the October. There were 15 candidates that had applied. Yes, and there's only one seat. So in scheduling the interviews, it became a little cumbersome, and they've not been able to do that. So that is coming forward, and once the council subcommittee makes their recommendation to the full council will make the appointment. So it wasn't necessarily that we need to do it today. The recommendation is by municipal code that we would. It has been tradition of the commission that the vice chair is kind of in training and then moves to chair. There hasn't been in the past, at least while I've been involved, that there have been a slate brought forward for consideration. So it's your prerogative. But as the chair, Ron, will not continue. You have an acting chair by the vice chair, and then you would possibly have a new commission member at the September meeting. But that's your decision.
Well, we all knew this was coming, so I would think that everyone has thought about it a little bit. So because of work obligations, I cannot do it. So I think Ryan would make a great addition to the executive branch, but I
Hear,
didn't have
hear.
a chance to talk to him yet. Would you consider it, Ryan, if we nominated you?
I might, but I'm actually technically like a rogue member of the commission right now because I had the city clerk's office reach out to me and ask if I would be interested in I guess, self-nominating for my commission, which actually technically ended in June. So I'm not even supposed to be here right now, and I haven't even heard from them on being reappointed. So
Oh, that's right, you were one of the filler terms.
yes. So
Oh, well, I'm more than happy to make a motion that on the condition that they re-nominate you, that if you would be interested in the chairperson position, if anyone would like to vote on that. Did I do that
I
appropriately?
second.
I mean, you're not going to strong
All
arm me
those in
right now,
favor?
but I'll think about it.
I think we just go talk to the city manager right now or city clerk and we get that cleared up.
You want to do it, Glenn?
No, I think I'm too junior to have that position, to be considered for it, so. But I think Ryan will make a great chair.
I mean, I was just joking a lot when I say that, but I think with what you did with, the whole film process, how you had it organized, you represented the commission very well, not just on TV, but just how you organized everything. And I'm not saying that none of us are organized, but you've really risen to the occasion and you've been active in a lot of different activities of the commission. So I would like to see what you would be able to do to follow in Ron's footsteps. So what do we need to do? Talk to the city?
Well, I'll just say this. If I thought we would have an executive committee meeting, I did. And if we had one, I would have put my name in. I'll just say that much, and that's it. But I think we need to have that executive committee meeting before we vote.
I agree with you.
Okay, any other conversation,
I just
discussion?
have a question. So in that executive committee meeting that you're talking about, your expectation is that that group would bring forward the slate?
Yeah,
based
to
on-
the full commission, right?
Okay, but based on their recommendation or input from everybody that you would create a slate?
The process
How-
I've seen work best for these sorts of things, and many times over, quite frankly, would be for, at a meeting like this, with an election coming up and with an active executive committee, would be to put the word out now and say, by the way, the executive committee is going to be meeting over the next 6 weeks or so prior to our September meeting, and the top of the agenda is putting together a slate of officers for the
Okay.
commission. So please, commission, please let any of
Okay.
us on the executive committee know that. We can bring that into that meeting, plus we can also, any of our individual interests, we can put that together and have the discussion that needs to be there. It needs to be a thorough discussion on how ready people are, what's really the type of load they're willing to take on. Have that discussion, then bring a potential slate here for the full commission to vote on.
Okay, thanks.
The other reason I think it's important is it provides a forum at executive committee for the type of personnel discussion, because it is a personnel discussion, that should happen in that kind of a forum. That's also why, quite frankly, I raised my hand. I mean, am I now off the executive committee? Because now I don't know. I thought I was just put on the executive committee, so I don't know.
I don't think you're off. I think you're on.
Because there was just discussion here about whether we wanted to select Ryan to be on the executive committee. So I don't get it.
I think that we've done in the last few years, we've actually elected, I mean, I remember gently encouraging you to consider carrying on in your capacity as the chair. I don't think it's anything that we're doing that's unusual, that we're trying to hide anything. It's on camera. I mean, all the members are here except for Denise. So it's not like we're doing anything that's terribly different. If you go into your committee meeting, executive committee meeting, you're more than welcome to nominate yourself today, as Ryan has kind of nominated himself. It's not a problem. We should have as many people that are interested and have a vote for it. But I know what you're saying, that you want to have.
No, I'm absolutely.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I know that I upset you when I interrupt you. So what I'm saying is, if you want to have a separate meeting with, who's on the executive committee with you?
Myself, Ron, and Denise.
Okay, so
And that is the executive
Okay,
committee.
no,
It's
no.
not a separate meeting.
I'm not saying it's not. Well, it is a meeting. The
Well,
three of
yeah,
you.
but it has never met.
Oh, okay. Well, then you go right ahead and have your meeting. But I am so sorry I'm frustrating you. I'm just trying to, for lack of better words, since we've never really discussed all this and how that would happen before, based on the history of how we've nominated and selected the chair and vice chair, you're more than welcome to have the meeting. That's fine. But I think what we've done is we've already nominated one person, and if you'd like to nominate yourself, I think that's fine.
I would like the chair or the vice chair of the executive committee, which I thought, we have an executive committee, I thought we had them in those roles, to call a meeting of that committee. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. Any other persons of interest for either vice chair or the chair position?
Do we need to renominate Denise? Would we say that at this meeting?
Yeah.
I would like to renominate Denise. I know she's expressed an interest to continue on.
I second that.
So to renominate as vice chair or chair?
Did she express to you that she was interested in continuing as vice chair?
She would do whatever the commission would ask her to do.
Let me withdraw that because I would like to speak to her first before. I thought you had said that she was interested in continuing on in her current capacity. So if she's interested in chair, I mean, I think the more the merrier.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay? So do we feel comfortable about, and being firm about it, that we will have the vote for chair and vice chair in September? At the September meeting, we will come to the table, and between then, we have a couple names that have been nominated, Jim, Ryan, and Denise, for the two positions. And between now and then, there will be a meeting of the executive committee that can discuss further. But there's 3 nominations that have been brought forward for people who are interested. So if there's anyone else who might show interest between now and September, shoot Dale a note. And then we will come prepared in September. That's okay? So we will come prepared in September to, we can have move from the floor for chair and vice chair, and we'll take a vote, and then their terms will start at the October meeting. Does
Okay.
that sound good?
Makes sense.
When is the executive committee meeting?
Hasn't been scheduled.
Okay. But
So
it will be before
between
the
now and
September.
then, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
That's good.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you
So
for
we're
that.
tabling for in September.
Tabling for September, and we're committed to make it happen in September. Everybody's committed, right?
So Dale, so do you want me, because I want to be able to vote for that, do you think I should wait till September to leave the Human Rights Commission? Or is it,
The city clerk said that if you wish to continue, you can continue until your seat has been filled
okay,
with a new appointment.
okay, wonderful. So September.
You're going to continue until September?
Yes. Because, no, no.
I have one
Marcus-
question. Does the chair serve for 3 years, or is it
One, each year,
each, the
right?
chairman?
Each July. Each July,
Each, so, for 1 year, the chair? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that conversation and the input. 7E, topical newsworthy items.
I have one. Okay. I am on the CARE committee for the Coachella Valley, and we know that homelessness is now an epidemic level in our community. It's a symptom of what has been going on in the years that have supported homelessness in our community. The Riverside County Office of Aging is rolling out a program called CHRIS, and this is Chris is going to diving into change, hopefully continuing a wraparound program for our homeless community. But we need more community partners, and we had Greg Rodriguez reaching out to the faith-based community, Emmanuel Perez. We are all involved in making this a program that's going to involve social workers, and a program that's going to be effective where these people will get their dignity, housing, and a purpose in life again. That is so important when you're dealing with this homeless population. It's not just feeding them and sending them off on their merry way, but we have to look at this crisis that's happening in our community. So I'm involved in this, and I will continue to be involved with the homeless population here. That's it.
I've got one, Ron.
Yep.
I just wanted to share with the group a story I read today about a new app that you can download to your phone, and for folks like us, we can be volunteers for. It's an app called Be My Eyes, and it is a piece of technology that helps people that can see help folks that cannot see or are visually impaired do daily things around their house or at the store. So for example, your phone would ring with a FaceTime call, and someone that's blind or visually impaired would tell you, "Hi, I'm at the store right now, and can you help me clarify if this is almond milk or 2% milk? Because this is what I want." And then you can look at it and you can tell them. And so it kind of helps them get through their day, and you feel like you're making a good contribution to the world. So I signed up for this app today, and at this point in time, there's 2.5 million volunteers worldwide that are available to help a registered 137,000 blind or visually impaired people. So look for it and read about it. It's called Be My Eyes, and if you wanted to do something or sign up to be a volunteer, you should.
I use that word.
You do?
Yes.
Oh,
And
cool.
there's another app called Seeing AI, and that's also a free app, and it is an awesome app. It was rolled out by Microsoft, and it has facial recognition. So now you take a picture of the person, and then you download it onto your phone, and anyone who comes, the person comes up in front of you, they would say their name. So that has currency reader, you can scan a product with it, you can read a document, you can handwrite a document and just hold your phone over. It will read it, especially for our disabled populations, our veteran populations, and even our visually impaired population. This is a great app. It has a light, it has it reads handwriting, it reads color. So it's called Seeing AI. So it's a wonderful app. You don't need your eyes anymore.
Excellent. Any other topical newsworthy items?
I have one. I want to especially give kudos to the city for opening up the nighttime shelter, a much needed service in our city. I know that it wasn't an easy thing, and there's a lot of glitches, I guess, in getting it started. I mean, we lost a night that we didn't expect to lose, but whatever it was got fixed, and it's a great service, and I really am proud of our city for recognizing the need and stepping up and doing something.
Beautiful. Okay, any agenda items for our next meeting other than what we've discussed already? Nothing new? I love it. And any announcements? I think we're good to go. Adjournment is item 9, and I would just like to adjourn today in memory of Lieutenant Colonel Robert Friend, who passed away on the 21st, and his services were this past weekend at the Air Museum. Frequent participant in our Veterans Day Parade, but I think he's 99?
Yeah, he's 99.
99, he lived a great life, and he was one of the first black pilots, flew 142 combat missions in World War II, and later served in the Vietnam and Korean Wars for a total of 28 years in the U.S. Air Force. So the commission will adjourn to adjourn
Dale,
regular meeting.
I'm sorry. Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry. I should have said that before, but I just want to say thank you for your service as chairperson. It's been amazing working with you, and very much appreciate your time
Excellent.
and
Well,
service.
thank you. Thank you. So now we will adjourn to a regular meeting Monday, September 9, 2019, 3 p.m. in the large conference room here at City Hall. Thank you all very much.